Hello and good evening, ladies and gentlemen and fellow vets. My name is John Gay. You could call me Lieutenant John Gay, and I think at this point in time, there's got to be a bunch of hecklers in the crowd. You damn Marines are all over the place. Like boo, hiss, give me a ride, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, before I begin, I'd just like to say uh, thanks for allowing me to take up some of your time on the Marine Corps birthday. What is it, the 241st birthday? And thanks to Jim Acker and the American Legion Post 560 to allowing this to happen. Jim came to me a few months ago and said, "Would you like to be able to do this?" And I said, "Absolutely." Actually, I was going to do it in person. But my doctor had a different idea. I've been going through some leukemia treatments, and I'm doing a bone marrow biopsy on today, the birthday. Right now, it's the 30th of October, and a couple things are really important. One is it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so boys and girls, be careful of all that stuff, spread the word, be mindful, do the right thing. The other thing is there's another guy in the background, Jerry Lawrence. He and I had worked together, as well as Jim and I, for years and years in the oil and gas business. Jerry and I did a bunch of clandestine stuff, and I thank him for his efforts and being a good friend, as well as Jim. And of course, all you punks out there are probably wondering why this is. My story is long and true. I'm going to kind of keep it focused on a Marine Corps event that happened in Viet Nam. My little snapshot is went to a Merchant Marine Academy, accepted my commission as an ensign in the Navy. Boom, right after graduation, Hi-O Silver. You go to Quantico for weapons training. You go down to the Fort Walton Beach Naval Air Station where you do survival training. Next thing I know, bam, I'm out in San Diego loading up a munitions carrier, going to Vietnam with a short stop in Pearl. Get to Vietnam on this boatload of stuff, because we know how to load stuff. That's the whole idea of the Merchant Marine. But we've cross-fertilized with the Navy, the Coast Guard, the Merchant Marine, all of this sort of thing. Anyhow, get to Vietnam, go to the Fleet XO and say, "Look, boss," who happened to be a graduate from the same academy. And I said, I don't really like this job because we got a boatload of armament and we don't know what to do with it because we can't shoot back because we ain't got no guns. So the moral of the story is be careful what you ask for, because shortly after that, boom, I'm in the rivers as a young ensign with 12 boats in my command, of which there's some stuff floating around in the background on another screen, I hope, where my command consisted of 12 boats, like I said, 6 PBRs, which are patrol boat rivers, 3 swift boats, which our good friend John Kerry has made a shambles of. Too bad he's Secretary of State or whatever the hell he is. Anyway, and then some other fast attack boats that we were using in different areas. So we were pretty busy the whole time. Anyway, as time went on, got graduated into full lieutenant. You go through the protocol, blah, blah, blah. Each one of the boats have a significant contribution to the war effort in Vietnam, of which I was there for the best part of 2 years. We covered a lot of ground. I'd say ground, but it's all water, obviously. From the Mekong Delta all the way to the very far north of Da Nang, to a little town called Hue, which is just south of the DMZ. The fast attack boats that we had, which is one of those pictures with all the waves and all the stuff. It was a big Operation Linebacker coordinated with the Air Force and the Navy to work the Gulf of Tonkin and make sure that all our friends in the North Vietnamese were not running a bunch of junk. The other part of it was down in the Mekong Delta, where there's a significant amount of open water. The swift boats were very useful. Bit of a draft, propeller driven, bunch of rocket propelled stuff. I've got a bunch of information on that kind of stuff, but again, that's another story, another time. The Mekong Delta, on the other hand, the PBRs were built for the Mekong Delta. Shitty water, shallow water, lots of junk. Our first tour had to do with police trafficking, basically. It was called Operation Game Warden, where you're cruising the rivers, you're checking all this stuff out, you're checking traffic across the river, up and down the river, and what ends up happening, you find a bunch of guerrillas, a bunch of contraband, you have some South Vietnamese sympathizers, and again, that's another story. But we always gave them a fair opportunity to count to three, get off the boat, or I'm going to burn the boat. So anyhow, but today's focus, because it's the Marine Corps birthday, my second tour was, and again, my entire crew. This is 12 boats, 120 crew members. And as a young punk, basically young and dumb and full of cum and smarter than a whip because we're college guys, you have to win over the crew. The crew was operated primarily by chief petty officers. I suspect that the chief petty officers are much like your gunny sergeants. So we'll see how that plays out as time goes on, and you win them over. And what I did know how to do was drive a boat and lead people. You lead by example. A lot of times my men didn't like me because I didn't allow a whole lot of shit. So I didn't allow them to smoke, and I was a smoker at the time. I didn't allow them to use deodorant, toothpaste. So there was a lot of love-hate relationship going on, but the whole idea is you lead by example. This particular story has to do with a second tour run, of which there were several, but this one in particular was in the Da Rang River Valley. The Da Rang is about halfway up Vietnam. If you're looking at a map, there's a bulge in Vietnam, and where the bulge is a little town called Toi. Toi is, and they had a little harbor there, so we were able to bring our boats in there, and these again are PBRs, which are highly maneuverable, reasonably fast, loaded with armament, and which, by the way, the boat itself is about 35 feet, 12 feet across on midships. We had armament out the ass. Typically we had dual 50 cals in the front. We had a 50 cal at stern. We had auto grenade launchers, which were pretty damn good, and the guys that were running those were all good men. We had flamethrowers. The flamethrowers, I mean, they had a great reach. They could probably reach out 150 feet, or probably even a little bit more on a good day. And they always had impressive results, which, I mean, burning a bunch of shit, right? Anyhow, we also, the grenades were probably 60 millimeter mortars as well. We had mini torpedoes. When we were in the Delta, we were doing mini torpedoes. So we had a lot of flexibility. In this particular case, one of my jobs was to coordinate the effort to get our boats upriver, typically in extremis cases. And the cases were always what I call recon recovery, which basically is search and rescue. And in this particular case, there was a Marine recon team, 6-member team, and the other stuff we got involved were, down pilots, Navy Marine pilots, helicopter guys who get shot down. Our job was to go get them. So, we put the boots on the ground, running through the jungle, yada, yada, yada. We were trained in CQC, which is close quarters combat, which the SEALs and the Marines were part of that training effort. Our standard issue stuff was an M16, 45 Colt 45s, ACP Colt 45s. My particular weapon of choice was a mini Thompson machine gun with flipped cartridges, so I had 90 rounds in it, just in case I ever needed them. Sometimes I did. We had the Marine K-bar, which most of you guys probably still use, is my guess. So I had to go get another one some years later because I left mine in the jungle, which is another story. Anyhow, the boats were magical. Super shallow draft, twin diesels. Each diesel was able to generate 220 horsepower, so we could haul ass up the river. We're doing probably 35, 40 knots, which is kind of inching up on 60 miles an hour. Super shallow draft, Kevlar hulls, ceramic cowlings, which were really good at deflecting bullets. And again, my job was to coordinate with the Air Force and the Army guys, because I think the first Cav helicopter pilots are like the very best. There may be some people that would disagree with that, but in this particular case, and you got to remember, this was like 40 years ago. The job was to coordinate with the Air Force. The Air Force had these huge helicopters called sky cranes. They looked like a giant centipede. What they would do, they would come to the village Toy in that little harbor there, capture our boat, airlift the boat upriver. And you can see from the slides that Jerry put together for us. You got the coast, you got some real shitty water, a lot of sediment, a lot of sandbars, a lot of junk like that. You go a little further upriver, there's like a podunk dam there, and then you go a little further up, and there's a daisy chain of 2 reservoirs, kind of what I call reservoirs. And then now we're getting into way upriver, and we're on the northwest part of the river, which is getting really close to the Central Highlands. Now, I don't know if any of you guys know this stuff, but the Central Highlands was just nothing but impregnated with VC strongholds, and just thousands and thousands of these little bastards running around. We called them LBFMs, little brown fighting machines, and of course, clever. So in this particular case, got the sky crane guys, pick our boat up, upriver we go. The dump us into, the plan was, or was at the time, was to dump us into the second reservoir upriver, and from there we'd book down up and take off and run. The first Cav, Army first Cav guys, would pick the crew up, and these guys were clever, man. I mean, they got ice in their veins. Boats already up there. We're following in from right behind. The first Cav guy goes, whoop. I mean, we pause, and it's like a pregnant pause. I don't get it, but they know how to do that. Jump off the helicopter. We go, get wet, get on the boat, crank her up, and now we're running upriver. And our intel was saying that these Marines on this recon team had evidently done a very good job because they pissed off a whole bunch of guys. And the little guys were coming after them, had them pinned up on the north side of the hill, or the riverbank. I believe we have a slide that kind of shows you what's going on. To digress just a minute or so, Jerry and I and Jim had worked for years and years, like I said, in the oil and gas business. Jim was probably one of the smartest guys I ever came across. Clever, electronics, could figure stuff out, field engineering, and a Marine guy. When we got to know each other, Jim said, you know, he'd be sitting there in his home watching videos of the Viet Nam conflict, and again, it was a conflict. And he goes, crying like a baby, wanted to be there. And I'm saying, Jim, it's probably just as well you didn't go because one, you're smart, two, you're going to do stupid things because you're so smart, and three, you ain't going to make it. So some things are just best left undone. Jerry and I have done a lot of clandestine stuff over time, and we put together a whole bunch of things, both militarily and professionally in the oil and gas business. One of the things Jerry had me do, and this is an awareness thing, I was teaching, he had put me out to teach navigation, electronic navigation, and positioning control at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California. And you're wondering, where's this going? So bear with me. So I'm teaching school, very first day, we have our first coffee break. Everybody in the school are Navy lieutenant commanders and above, captains and XOs, the whole 9 yards. And most of them don't know shit about stuff, but they think they do. Anyhow, we're having this little break, and here comes this young guy, and he's a lieutenant. I'm a civilian now, obviously. So got my little three-piece suit on, cool haircut, all that jazzy stuff, thinking I'm smarter than hell, and of course we all thought we were. Excuse me. So this young guy comes up, and he goes, "John Gay," and I said, "Yep." And he said, 72, 73, 74, Viet Nam. So I'm looking at him and I'm saying, "Why are you asking?" So he looks around at all these top dogs, big dogs, and he says, "Well, at the Naval Academy, of which I'm a recent graduate," and you can tell he's a fast-tracking, motivated young man. And he goes, "At the Academy, Naval Academy, they're teaching a lot of your unorthodox maneuvers." So I look around at the group that's having coffee. You know, we just got the cup going on, the cup finger thing. And I said, I guess we just changed the curriculum of the course, because most of these people could care less about electronic navigation and positioning, but they are interested in stories. So that was the awareness. You know, you put your time in, you do your time, you do all the right stuff. The next thing you know, something happens that triggers all of this stuff. So now, that was my awareness threshold or wake-up call to say that maybe shit that we did 20 years earlier, or yeah, it's probably 20 years, was probably worth the effort. And we were very successful at it. And I could tell you how it all got started, but again, it's another story. Anyhow, back to the real McCoy now. So now you know there's like some weird stuff going on. Little John is in charge, as a lieutenant, in charge of these crews. These guys are my charter. So up the river we go. The boats get dropped in. The helicopter guys cruise in. We jump out, get wet, crank them up. We're heading upriver. There's a diagram. Hopefully it's at least somewhat legible. So, but what's happening is the river's running northwest, southeast, drains on down to the reservoirs, down to the next reservoir, and then out to sea. As it turns out, and Intel had said that these guys were trying to get out, having trouble making things meet. And as we got up there and we're observing what's going on, you can instantaneously see they are tremendously outnumbered. And one of the things about the Viet Cong, clever little bastards. You can do all the research on this you want, but here's the fact. The fact is that they typically would do like a crab control insertion, where the tentacles of the crab would wrap around to cut off your flanks, so you got nowhere to go. Now these guys are pinned on a bank, the river's at their ass. And what they want to do is the head of the crab is going to come in, it's going to grab you by the belt buckle, and that's what they do. That's what they want to do, and they're going to wipe you out. They're going to attack, and they're going to attack with a vengeance, and they're going to annihilate you. Well, that's typically not our game in response to that, so here's what we were doing. Doing a quick assessment of this. The unorthodox maneuvers, because we read the book and we forget the book. The bad guys read the book and remember the book. They know we're going to go in a chevron formation. They know we're going to go in line formation. That's just what the Navy does. Dumb, but that's what they do, or that's what we do and have done for, I don't know, centuries probably. So now, what I called for my guys was to do an elongated X. So 2 of my boats are running up and down the river at a distance, and we're just making some strafing runs because we want to soften things up a little bit, grab a little of the bad guys' attention, takes the heat off the guys on the bank, your guys, your Marine Corps guys on the bank, and let's face it, they're fighting for their lives because they're either going to shoot themselves, jump in the river and drown, or get shot, and whatever else can go on, most of which is bad. So in the elongated X formation, we take 2 guys, we're off into the river, and we're crossing like this. Now, one guy's going to be at one end, is using his flamethrowers. He's going to cut off the flank. This is the whole thing we train for. Cut off the rear flank of the VC on the southeast edge. The guy on the north end is doing the same thing. He's cutting off with flamethrowers, and remember I said these had impressive results, and they do have impressive results. So now I'm trapping the VC guys on the flank. So they're either going to have to be aggressive and come in and work on the Marine Corps guys and let the guys that are going to be doing the attacking, the head of the crab, come in trying to grab the belt buckle. But at the same time, we got dual 50 cals on the bow of each one. So now we're cutting these guys off in each direction. So we are taking care of the flanks because we are attacking big time. Because I'm telling you, there's a lot of shit flying around there. The whole key of the elongated X is timing. Not only were we looking at the situation of the guys on the bank, I'm looking at the situation of the people in the river. My guys in the river, what does the river allow us to be able to do? So now I'm looking across at the bank right behind the Marine Corps recon team. There's this big ass sandbar with a bunch of water on the other side between the sandbar and the bank. So I'm thinking, I got it. So, and all of this is going on at the same time. Our grenades are being launched over the lop. We're lopping grenades off in the bank. We're kind of nailing the guys off in the back so they're not going to grab the belt buckle. You know, this stuff makes you chills, gives you chills. Anyhow, the key of it is, like I said, timing. So now we got these guys crossing. I'm across river, lopping grenades over there, doing a bunch of junk, doing a bunch of crap. And I want to get my timing, and I am going to go for the throat of the crab because the crab is trying to grab my guys. Ain't happening. So as soon as these 2 boats cross in the elongated X, here I come through the X. I mean, there's smoke and there's shit flying all over the place. Nobody knows what the hell's happening except we know what we're doing. So I cut through this thing. I have 2 cals, 50 cals, twin cals on the front, and we're lopping grenades and shit like that over the heads of the Marine recon team. Pretty damn exhilarating. So now, once I get through the smoke, I'm looking at this bank. So I'm hitting the sandbar. So I'm looking at the sandbar, and just before I hit the sandbar, I crank the boat like this, flips up in the air. So now all of my guys are protected by the hull of the boat. Bam! Into the water we go. It floods. I mean, the whole bank is awash because these boats, fully loaded with personnel and armament, were on the order of 7 tons. So the bank is awash. All of a sudden, there's no shooting. because life is stopped. Now this is the moment of opportunity. It's like if you have a house invader. I mean, you want the shotgun? Because the shotgun noise, cranking it, everybody stops. So that's exactly what happened with the washing of the bank. So my guys, I said, get these guys off the bank. Get the bag. You know, we're yanking these 6 guys off. We're throwing them on our boat. A couple of them were banged up pretty good. So, and while we're doing this, all my guys are looping around and they're redoing the X. Redoing the X. And granted, it doesn't take a whole lot of time because you ain't got a whole lot of time. So we snatched the 6 guys off the bank. I'm racing up to the north. I can see we got an avenue for escape. So we're running out of the sandbar area and the little wash place. So I'm running northwest up the river. My guys are still doing the X's. I get up clear, and then I'm saying, and all my guys ever wanted to hear from me was clear the bank. So now we start running into an inline formation. We're heading down the river because we've got our guys. We're hauling ass, and I'm saying clear the bank. And we just gave it everything we had. We have 950 calibers. We've got grenade launchers. We got flamethrowers. We are tearing those boys a new asshole. And I'm not sure what the numbers are, but anybody that can live through that is a Superman. So anyway, all that said and done, we're probably in pretty good shape. Now we're starting to run down the river. We get back into the reservoir. We get back down to the second reservoir, or the first reservoir. The Cav guys are waiting, standing by. You know, we've got a little perimeter set up with some other guys. So we're able to snatch the boats, pick them up. We got the first Cav guys doing medevacs, getting the Marines off. My guys get second wave of choppers. We get back up. We head down the river. We'll fly and regroup in the village at the sea, that town Toy, and you know that's pretty much how it went. Exhilarating, fun. It's not as much fun. I'm sure it's not as much fun as I remember it being. But I tell you what, it's pretty cool stuff. You have an awareness of doing it. You're doing the things. All you Marines are all over the world. You've been policing the world since 1775, I guess, or whatever. And what we are as the Navy are a global force, as the commercials all say, and they get you all pumped up. And that's pretty much about it. The end result of that, of my career in the 2 all-expense-paid trips I had in South Vietnam, were 2 Navy Crosses. I have 2 Silver Stars, 2 Bronze Stars, campaign ribbons, probably almost 6 rows, but 5 for sure, with a couple extras. Invaluable opportunity. It's an exercise in responsibility, courage, stupidity, all of these things. So I want you guys to be proud of the work that you've done. I want you to be proud of who you are. I want you to be proud to be American and a serviceman. And there's no better way to say, God bless you, thank you, God bless America.